My name is Ben Hanse, Head of Research and Innovation with the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, proud core partner of the UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub. And this is the session on innovation to serve and enhance circularity with a focus on digital innovation to accelerate that transition. Just a very quick housekeeping note. There we go, now we're back. A quick housekeeping note before I introduce our speakers today. We're a bit pressed for time, so apologies. If we could keep the remarks to 2.5 minutes each for each question. We've got a fantastic panel. And then for those of us following, we are using the hashtag UGIH to follow all of the conversations that are happening across COP27. Very quick context and background. We know that non-circularity of our economy is one of the drivers of GHG. Oh, I'm back again. One of the main drivers of GHG emissions, consumption of precious natural resources, pollution, biodiversity loss. These business models rely on increasing quantities of natural resources, increased levels of manufacturing, just greater resource intensity on the whole. But we know that innovation, in particularly digitally enabled innovation, can provide alternatives and solutions. Examples include data-enabled product as a service, digital twins, eco-design for sustainable products regulation. Our good friend and colleague Elisa will go into that in a second. The digital product passport and digitalization of supply chains and others. We've seen this movement evident across the Global Covenant. Last month, Tokyo and Kuala Lumpur received a C40 Bloomberg Philanthropies Award for their joint work on buildings decarbonization, for example, and amazing work on digital twinning. Today, again, as I mentioned, we have a distinguished panel of leaders, of experts and trailblazers paving the way towards this future that meets the needs of communities the world over, led by digital transformation. So quick rundown of the folks speaking, and we'll get right to it. First, we'll have Elisa Yakovidis from DG Connect, the Directorate General for Connectivity. Digital aspect of green transitions is his focus, working on maximizing the benefits of green digital transformation in cooperation with many commission services and external stakeholders. We'll also be hearing from Elisa Tonda, Chief of Resources and Market Branch at UN Environment Program. She has more than 20 years of experience in the field of environmental management, business sustainability, resource efficiency, sustainable consumption and production, and circular economy and sustainable development. Gwneaelle Avice Huet, Chief Strategy and Sustainability at Schneider Electric, who's been a member of the Executive Committee since April 1st, 2022. She leads the development of corporate strategy, mergers and acquisitions and divestment activities, sustainability, and customer satisfaction and quality. Next to my right, Gayle Schueller, Chief Sustainability Officer from 3M, Senior Vice President as well. She started in 3M's corporate laboratory as a product development engineer and has over 29 years of technical and business leadership experience, a career that spans a broad range of businesses from electronics to healthcare to consumer industries. Next, Carolyn computer engineering researcher at CAA List, the Digital Systems Expertise Center of France's largest public research institute with a mission of innovation for industry. She's coordinator of the CIRPASS consortium, collaborative initiative for standards-based digital product passport for the circular economy, and has more than 20 years of experience in integrated circuit design for IoT and wireless communications. Mathew Fraser, Head of Research and Development, lead of Circularity Reporting Initiative, to my far right over here, has spent over 10 years advising cities, nations, and businesses on how to set and achieve circular economy targets. And last but not least at all, and you'll hear from him later in the session, Eric White, Head of Tech for the Sustainable Development Goals at the World Economic Forum, where he oversees the integration of technology on the forum's work on nature and climate, and is leading a new forum effort on climate adaptation. Now that the introductions are through, and that was a mouthful, let's just hear from the experts who have so much to say on the topic. Elias, I'll pass the floor to you to kick us off. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for the attention. I don't know if you can see my slide.
Not yet. There we go. You're good to go.
Very good. So what I would like to say maybe before, is kind of repeat the message that you just read, that the circular economy is a way for us to achieve not only emission reduction, but many other sustainability goals. So the SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, is kind of the driver behind many other SDGs. So I would say it's kind of more equal, if you think SDG, where we, on the left side, you see the natural resources. So you see not only the carbon, I mean the oil and the gas, but also water, sand, wood, metals, and so on. And they are associated one-to-one for the last how many decades with what we call GDP. So economic growth equals growth of consumption of natural resource. It's tightly coupled. The whole idea of a circular economy is to decouple not only the economy from natural resources, but also the well-being. Because what is economy at the end of the day? Economy, the whole economic construction is for the well-being and security of people. So we need to decouple our well-being and the well-being of future generations from the use of natural resources. And more than that, we also want to make sure that the impact of this consumption is the minimal, and that's where the emissions as well come into picture, but not only. As I said, there are other environmental factors, biodiversity, water, pollution, that we need to pay attention to. And this is the bigger picture that the emissions depend on. So having and seeing everything only with the carbon glasses through, sometimes we miss opportunities and ways to do things. So if you look at what is really circular economy about, it's all about cooperation 5.0. It is about sharing information at small and large circles that you see in front of you. It's about digitizing supply chain. It's about sharing information. It's about what we call, and I will mention later, product information flow. We call it digital product passport. For that to be enabled, well, we have a lot of technical challenges, but most of all, we need to enable trust, and we need to enable with this information new way of thinking and new way of doing business. We need to do profitable business with sustainable and less resource-intensive ways that are still profitable and serve better the social and the needs of people. So how can we serve the needs of our populations while using less natural resource, emitting less emissions, polluting less, and stopping the biodiversity loss? That is the big question. And for that, digitalization is a must. There's just no way without it. But it's just a mean. Digitalization is one of many pieces of a puzzle that need to come together. And the innovation to see the bigger picture, how to use best digital, is what we will discuss today. So what we do in EU, we have several packages that we have introduced since the Green Deal came into play. And that is one of those that I wanted to mention in particular is the one that we adopted end of March, and that is the circular, eco-design criteria for sustainable products that introduces not only legislative actions to forbid destruction of unsold products, it kind of introduces design criteria. When you want to build a product, we give you design criteria to make it durable, repairable, refurbishable, reusable, everything, including recyclable. And the new kid on the block that excites all of Europeans and beyond, all world, is what we call digital product passport. You will hear more about that from Carolyn, who is our coordinator of the biggest project we have on the topic. But just to tell you that the digitization that you've seen is to benefit everybody, not only B2B, businesses, not only consumers, not only governments, not only resellers. Everybody should be able to benefit from that while changing their business models from quantity-driven business models to services and less material-intensive ways that serve the needs of people. At the same time, they are as profitable. So if we don't make sustainability to be cheaper in the business of tomorrow, we will not have much chance to also tackle climate change. That is my message for today. And of course, now the content is all up to the speakers. Thank you.
Elias, thank you so much. Profitability and sustainability hand in hand. That's a massive takeaway for us. And maybe to just kick off our panel discussion, Gayle, Gwneaelle, I'll start with you both, and maybe with you first, Gayle, here in the room with us. Building on what Elias has just said, how do we practically innovate then to enhance and accelerate circularity? How do we put it into action?
So at 3M, you know, we take our innovation and our science very seriously. And we've been, you know, publishing sustainability reports, setting goals, communicating progress since 1990. But it was actually at a COP event in 2018 that we decided we were going to step it up one more level. Because while, as our CEO would say, you know, innovation is important, but innovation isn't truly innovation until you incorporate sustainability. So what we did is we made a requirement for every new product we launch must have a sustainability value commitment. So we have 3 pillars around our sustainability strategic framework. They're about science. It's all about science because that's kind of how we roll. But science for circular, science for climate, and science for community. So right there, the very first one is about science for circular. And it can range in a broad variety of ways. It can be about using raw materials that are recycled. Scotch-Brite sponges, for example. The scouring piece today, I'm pleased to announce that every place in the United States and rolling out around the world, those are from recycled fibers today. Okay, it can become all those types of things, more efficiencies there. Then it can be about things we do for our customers, about how we help our customers reuse content and be more circular in their piece. And then finally, about how do you really reinvent an economy? And that gets to some things that I'm really excited to be working on with a number of partners about reinventing recycling and really getting to what is advanced recycling? How do we really take things that, you know, we don't collectively recycle today, but bring that forward into advancing a circular economy. So there's lots and lots of examples I'll be happy to share with you, but those are kind of, that's the framework within which we innovate for sustainability.
There's a lot to unpack, and recycled fiber across the country is a fantastic progress. Thank you for sharing. Gwneaelle, let me come to you. Any thoughts on the same question that we just shared with Gayle?
Yes, thank you. I think that what has been said already resonates with what we're doing. Elias was saying, you know, circular economy is very much a partnership element. We need to work across the board to make it a difference. And I think that's the key point. And we need to build this relationship with suppliers, but also with our clients to make that meaningful. So for us, Schneider Electric, I would say we have been committed to sustainability for the past 18 years with KPI again, but it's also the whole culture of the company that is now around sustainability. And I think it's really important because when it comes to technology company like us, doing electrical, doing software, and a lot about digitization, at the end of the day, what makes a huge difference is your R&D investment. What you deliver over the long term. For example, we just released some products that we've been developing for the last 10 years. So it's a long-term effort. So we used to say basically that what we are doing is very much like a marathon without a finish line. We always need to reinvent ourselves. And on circular economy, it's something that is, you know, a new open door. I mean, we've been doing a lot of stuff and I will share that with you, but there is so much that we can do in the future, much more. And therefore, I think it's an avenue to, you know, work with other companies in order to move the needle. Now, in terms of concrete examples, we are developing products that are very much linked to circular economy. And our operations is also very much linked to circular economy. Just one example, in the KPI that we track, we want to increase the green material in the proportion of products that we deliver by 50% by 2025. It's not easy because in reality, all those new areas like green material, it's something new that is being built. So at the end of the day, when you're looking for thermoplastic, for steel, for aluminum, etc., there are not so many areas where you could buy this kind of new green materials. So at the end of the day, it's something that you have to build, okay, almost from scratch. But the demand is there, and we have to advocate for our clients that this is a huge difference. So another example, we've been also working with cardboard and pallets in order to make sure that everything is recycled or certified resources. Not easy again, because I mean, you need to identify what are the right suppliers. Are they numerous enough? What is meaning in terms of size and volume? And to that, it's very difficult to supply. It's just to show you that for us, what matters is to attract the whole spectrum of the value chain of the circular economy. It starts with some companies very much committed, making a link with some clients in order to show what's the difference in terms of product usage and drag the world suppliers in that direction.
Gwneaelle, that was passionately delivered, and it shows, I think, in the work that you all are doing at Schneider Electric. So thank you for sharing some of those examples. Gayle, I'll give you the opportunity to complement that. Any additional examples from the 3M experience that can improve circularity across the product lineup?
Okay, there's lots of examples I could share. So I'll go with another one from our consumer business, which really gets to, it's a new product, just launched in the last few months. And for those of you, and myself included, that really love popping bubble wrap, this is kind of sad news, but save what you have now, because we've introduced a product called Cushion Lock. And I should have brought a sample, as it turns out. It's made from 100% recycled paper, and it's an innovative design that rolls up just like a roll of paper, but it is patterned in such a way that when you stretch it out, it actually corrugates and creates air gaps in between it. We did, I think I can share this. If I wasn't supposed to, it's too late now, or it's too late in a minute. But when we trialed with a certain very large online manufacturer, or online distributor of products, they do a lot of testing. You may get feedback on their packaging, and customers were immediately saying, "Where do I buy this? How do I get this?" It's a fantastic product. You wrap it, you wrap what you're shipping, and it takes up less space in shipping, less weight in shipping, and it's and fully from recycled content. Goes into your curbside recycling. So that's a Cushion Lock. Look for it before Christmas. So that's
incredible.
A good one.
The child in me just died. Yes, thinking about bubble wrap going away, but absolutely.
I bet you can still find some, at least for now.
And what I want to pick up on that actually is the process that you mentioned ties in really nicely with what Gwneaelle was saying around having these relationships across the entire spectrum, suppliers, everyone who you work with, the stakeholders, which is critical. Now I want to also move to Mathew on our right, and zoom out a little bit and think about what the key value chains and sectors are who will be playing a massive role in closing this gap in circularity. Curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thanks. Great question. And also, I really appreciated Elias's presentation at the beginning, because I think it does highlight not just the dimension of cycling around the circular economy, but also, really reducing the amount of total input to begin with, extending that lifetime as long as we can, and also drawing on regenerative resources to the capacity that we can within ecological limits. But we actually published 2 years ago a report looking at the role that a circular economy could play in mitigating climate change, and I think there we were really exploring, let's say, these 4 dimensions, and I think what really came out was really 3 key sectors. I think the food system, which I think around COP you'll hear a lot about, mobility, of course, but even housing. And I think there what we've explored was 21 solutions actually that we could really prioritize that would actually cut emissions, global emissions, by about 40%. I think the interesting thing there is that these emissions that would come from circular economy strategies are actually on top of NDCs, so the nationally determined contributions. So in addition to our transition to renewables, if we really focus on kind of resource smart strategies within mobility, food systems, and built environment, I think we're really really shifting into a whole other gear in terms of emissions reduction potential. So that's quite exciting.
That's really helpful to hear, Mathew. Just building on that, I mean, any more concrete examples that you might want to share there, just focusing on those value chains that you mentioned?
Yeah, no, indeed. So actually this year we're looking into indeed moving just beyond climate change, and also a lot of the other impacts that are, challenging us in the 21st century. I think remarkably the food system is it's vast, it's dynamic, but even when we look into those really transformative solutions, sometimes the simple ones really surprise you. In fact, I was part of a discussion earlier today where we were looking at the role of black soldier flies, not only as a way for getting significantly lower impact protein out into the world, and I think if my memory recalls, I think about 25% of meat consumption in the U.S. is actually due to pets, animals, foods, cats and dogs. Perfect match for this. But I think what interests me there is that the byproducts of soldier flies are a great additive to soils, and also the food waste problem can be cycled by feeding those to the black soldier fly. So I think for us, whenever we can sort of combine these four strategies and try to compound the impact that they can have, it doesn't always need to be super high tech, but certainly circular economy principles can really kind of get you there in terms of what are the big impacts that we can have.
I think when we talk about impact, a lot of that really reaches across different sectors in the ways in which you've just described it, which is crucial, I think, for the systems transformation that we've been talking about all week here at the Global Innovation Hub. Elisa, you've been patiently waiting, Elisa Tonda, folks from UNEP. I'll turn to you with a question around the circular economy projects and initiatives that you are supporting, and just curious to learn more about expected impact. How can those be scaled? Elisa, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ben, and a pleasure to be with this very impressive panel. And I'm going to bring into the conversation probably a slightly different dimension compared with the ones that have been touched now, which is very much one around how can we create the enabling framework and the enabling conditions that will help us bring to scale these efforts. As from the beginning of the framing that Elias was making in the conversation, circularity is indeed a way for us to advance on Sustainable Development Goal 12, but actually this is so much interconnected to so many other goals and priorities that are there for countries, and our countries are aiming to achieve. So one of the ways in which we're actually helping that scaling up is to work with countries and showing how, in the context of their national plans to advance on the Sustainable Development Goals, to advance towards the Paris agreements or other multilateral environmental agreement, what is the critical role that circular economy is playing to create that acceleration. And we did so, for example, in Dominican Republic, where for the tourism sector, a sector which is so central for their economy, how linking circularity to all the targets that they had for this sector helped boost and accelerate progress. But that's not where we stop only. And so we also go into the, once we have set these as a priority in the agenda, how can we accelerate that transformation? And that acceleration really requires a lot of players, as already alluded to in earlier intervention, along the value chain to press on the accelerator and move ahead. So working with policymakers to understand what is the mix of policy instrument that creates the ideal setting. We've heard about product-related policies, design-related policies, but also labeling and transparency-related requirements, also the engagement with consumers that would have then better visibility of what is the role they play in this context of circularity. And last but not least, also creating the right setting and platform for those different players to come together. So we have been working, for example, in setting up extended producer responsibility models in countries. An example is in Nigeria, where we have been working along the electronic value chain in an initiative with the support of the Global Environmental Facility. And there it was really very much around bringing the different players together and making sure that they were owning their new role and their new responsibility in the context of circularity. Let me not forget to plug into the conversation also the important role of the finance sector in accelerating the pace of transformation. And there, the UNEP Finance Initiative, which is bringing together investor, banks, and insurers, is really another important key player in, again, boosting through their products that acceleration of circularity. I mentioned briefly consumers, and I think it's also important not to underestimate their role in connections to what can be done to extend the lifetime of product, to think about options related to repairing rather than discarding products. And last but not least, challenging our mindset and shifting from an idea of ownership to an idea of functionality. So what is the service we require rather than what is the product we require? And obviously all of these are different ingredients of our projects and our initiatives. All of them really very much target into scaling up. Ben, I hand it back to you.
Elisa, thank you so much. And you should know, you got 2 thumbs up from Catherine Foster here from Green Digital Finance Alliance. Obviously good friends and colleagues. And I should say as well, you know, at the Global Covenant of Mayors, we focus on situating cities in a journey across taking climate action, right? Start to finish and back again. It's all circular. I feel like this panel is giving me massive tour de table feels, just going around different sectors, different constituents, and trying to understand how they matter in the space. But then also I think I've counted now like 10 different calls to action from each one of you, which is just fantastic to hear. Also patiently waiting on Teams with us is Carolyn. And I want to turn to you because Elias raised the bar earlier and said that you have a lot to speak on the digital product passport, and I'm really keen to learn more. That's a new tool proposed by the Commission to improve circularity. Please tell us, take me to school. What is it and how does it work?
Yes, can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm afraid I'm going to get a little bit technical. So, just to define things, the digital product passport, it's a product data and life cycle information management tool, okay, designed to support the exchange of information between the stakeholders of the circular economy. And here when I say stakeholders, I'm thinking about manufacturers, circular supply chain companies, consumers, regulators, customs officers, corporate purchasing officers, etc., etc., etc. So if we dig into it a little bit more precisely, the digital product passport is an association between a product-specific information model and a supporting IT system. Okay. And to build this supporting IT system, I need 4 things. I need a unique identifier. I need a data carrier for this identifier. I need a digital connector between the physical product and the digital place of information where the data is stored. And I need a standardized IT system, which includes many different components. I can go into it more if you like, but I need a little bit more time. So as Elias said, I'm the coordinator of the CIRPASS project, which is a European funded project to move towards gaining a wide consensus on the standards that are needed to design the GPP system. And the European Commission asked us to focus on 3 sectors, batteries, electronics, and textiles. And so I seized this opportunity to invite all similar international initiatives to connect with us, because we're interested in hearing from all initiatives who have given thought to digital data products, data sharing systems for the circular economy.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Call to action number 11, connect with CIRPASS. I think that there's a lot of potential there. And we do have maybe 1 or 2 extra minutes just to go back to the digital product passport. When we're thinking about impact, when we're thinking about expected benefits of this, how would you describe those, and what can we expect folks to take away from it, whether consumers, users, or the company's private sector representatives who are here in the room?
Okay, so I have a few examples, but there are many examples. For example, It's expected that the digital product passport will facilitate the tracking of raw and recycled materials in products and also support due diligence efforts. In the B2B context, the digital product passport can be used to track the life story of products to enable new product lifetime extension and value retaining services. All of the R's of the circular economy: reuse, reman, recondition, repair, etc., etc. And so, in this way, enable new business models. For example, it's expected to considerably increase maintenance and repair rates of products, and also increase the availability of high purity recycled materials. So that's one benefit. Another benefit will be to facilitate the automatic access to relevant product data. And here, this is very important. We're all drowning in data, with the data deluge and all that. So access to relevant, stakeholder-specific relevant data is really an important aspect. Because we need this in order to make it easier and less costly to compare products. So this is necessary to lower the effort required to access high quality information and support sustainable purchasing choices. I can go on with other examples if you give me time, but otherwise I'll leave it there.
No, I think that's enough of a flavor for now, and if we do have time, then happy to come back. It's something to really watch out for, it sounds like, on the digital product passport side. Thank you so much for sharing that. Gayle, I'll come back to you. Curious, we've heard folks go around the table here, different solutions, different examples. With yourselves at 3M, or in general as well, how do you leverage digital technologies and improves and tools, to improve circularity, or more broadly, just circular business models? Yeah. Where are you seeing a lot of those inflection points?
Yeah, so I'll start with a couple examples of where we bring digital business models to life and really transform things. I think there was a time when people thought of us as synonymous with Post-it notes. In the last several years, I think people are seeing us more and more synonymous with N95 respirators. And we actually have a much broader safety portfolio that may be of interest to you. And one of the important things that we've advanced from a digital perspective is a digital program for workers at sites to be recognized with sensors in the devices to make sure they have the right equipment on when they go into a space. Now, it's not going to work for here if you're worried about COVID connection. We haven't done that one yet, but we have talked about it. But what we are working on is in safety spaces, if you're going into a confined space, if you're going to a space where there might be a chemical exposure, we want to make sure you have the right conditions, and rather than going through a training process, which we also track digitally, it actually has a sensor in the equipment itself. So it's really a service model around sustainable life type of things. We also have products in the whole health safety space that help doctors be able to talk with you with natural language processing, so they can look at you in the eye rather than scribbling down notes. So that's another one. But I'll bring us back to one of the real challenges that I think happens in circularity around a digital perspective is tracking all the materials that might be of use. Now, internally, we track our materials and we go from one to another. What could be a byproduct in one manufacturing site, we bring in, and that can work pretty well in our own facilities. But as you start going to other companies, how do you track that? How do you make those connections? There's a really exciting opportunity there. And I'll tell you just one other circularity example is in our roofing granules business. I know you're all excited about roofing granules. I'll tell you that I am, because now we reinvented them, so they don't only protect your roof, but they can be smog reducing, pull smog out of the air, they can reflect heat to help affect urban heat islands. But unfortunately, there's a byproduct that comes with that, and it's just pieces that are too small to be properly used on roofing granules. It was actually the largest byproduct in our portfolio by weight. That it was the heaviest piece of byproduct that we had when we did our Pareto chart. And so we started to look at who might use these. Well, you know what? It goes into the concrete industry. So we can take that heavy emitting concrete industry, use this material instead, and effectively reduce 3/4 of a ton per ton by using this byproduct. We don't have enough to cover the world, don't get me wrong, but it's a pretty exciting type of connection. And if we did this manually, you know, it was very, it was kind of a network of figuring out where you could use it. But imagine if there was a real digital solution that would connect people across different supply chains to find out where there was a material that was underappreciated, let's say, someplace, and could be used as a raw material someplace else. So it's a pretty interesting opportunity.
That's a fascinating mosaic that you've painted, and I just, you know, want to flag, this resonates so much with the work that Masamba, Carlos, Sylvia are doing here at the Global Innovation Hub, thinking about core human needs, right? All of the things you've mentioned focus on people, and they revolve around people and what they need, what the gaps are, and it's fantastic to hear that. Gwneaelle, I want to flip the same question to you. Digital technologies, tools to improve circular business models. How is Schneider Electric working on that piece as well?
Yes, thank you very much. I think earlier you were mentioning that measurement is important, data in measurement is very important. Well, in our strategy, we see numbers of clients asking to decarbonize. They just don't know in which way to do it, just want to decarbonize, but they need support to do that. And so basically we have developed 3 pillars in order to accelerate the transition. Is to work first on their strategy of decarbonization. Then we digitize everything. We want to track, you know, all the emissions that they're having, and then we help them decarbonize. And when it comes to decarbonization solution based on the data that we know on site from customers, well, circularity is a key enabler, a key pillar. And so I have numbers of examples where we leveraged on circularity in order to provide health status of assets based again on digital, and therefore it was a way to help them decide on the remaining lifetime, on the second life or potential of any asset. So deciding on what to do with the asset with a precise way to assess the lifetime of the asset. So just one example, we have been developing you know, a platform, a software platform, which is called EcoStruxure Transformer Expert. We had numbers of clients that had transformer and they wanted to understand better the health status of the old transformers, just to see, you know, based on data, what's the decision they had to make between replacement, maintenance, etc. And therefore, we developed this platform. It's based on IoT sensors and software analytics, and it helps to have data-driven decisions. And we had numbers of examples for which it enabled them to extend asset lifetime and delay replacement by up to 10 years, representing CapEx savings of like more than 3 million. Just concrete examples on how data can make a huge difference.
Gwneaelle, thank you so much for sharing, and I think even just that last one, just on the status checks can really come a long way, not only for companies in this space, but obviously for the consumers, the target consumers, right? Being able to monitor the life cycle of their own products and bring them really into that process. Elisa, I'll turn to you next, or come back to you next as well. You know, you mentioned a couple of fantastic examples, the Dominican Republic being one of them as a country. But want to turn to small and medium enterprises, SMEs. Where do you see their role in the transition to a circular economy? Particular challenges, particular opportunities. What have you seen in your line of work so far?
Thank you very much, Ben. And indeed, it's very interesting because we're looking at a whole transformation of an entire value chain. And part of these value chains are different actors, including small and medium-sized enterprises that are at times not even part or aware of the conversations that we're having today and the implications that decisions such as the one that are taken these days would have for them. And what has been very interesting from the work that we have been doing with them through a number of projects framed under the umbrella of the concept of eco-innovation, a concept that we have promoted with the support of the European Union, initially across sector and currently focusing a little bit more on the textile value chain. It's very interesting to see that small and medium-sized enterprises are normally very flexible in the way in which they operate. So when it's about taking up a new business model and new business opportunities, they frequently are readier than others to make that jump into the new configuration. But what is particularly valuable for them is to have a strong connection with the ecosystem, with the business ecosystem around them. And obviously, digital solutions are very important in that sense, to really build those strong connections with the actors around them, with the markets towards which they are oriented, including in the way in which they are passing over information. I, however, have to say that in order to achieve that transformation, to help small and medium-sized enterprises to see those opportunities and to grasp those opportunities going forward, they frequently need, how could I call that, eye-openers that are coming from projects or from strong partnerships with larger actors in the context of their supply chain, or demand from markets. So when alluding to very interesting options and actions, including from governments that could be taken, I would not want to underestimate the potential that governments have in driving market through their public procurement decisions that in countries go up to significant shares of the GDP, and therefore making sure that there is a demand for products that are circular, that are more transparent in the way in which they are produced, and they are streamed across the value chain, is also an important signal that to SMEs, but not only, will trigger them and encourage them into this transformation.
Elisa, thank you. I'm learning more and more with each and every sort of speaker that we come to here, and I guess in that context, a question to open it up to everyone. And Mathew, I'll start with you, and I'll just go around the table, the screen. We've heard a lot of the examples, a lot of the solutions, the progress that folks on our incredible panel today are spearheading. But where are the challenges? What are the challenges that we're facing today? If you could pick one or two that we're facing in this transition to a circular economy.
It's a good question. I think the somewhat easy answer is scaling. I think actually if you look around today, there are so many great examples. They're very small, they're very niche. I think we need, not only an energy transition, a food transition, there's a whole sort of materials-based, resource-based transition that needs to unfold, and that requires a massive amount of scale. We're, I think this week, crossing 8 billion people on the planet, will be 10 by 2050. It requires really digging in and getting to that next level. So I think there's a whole lot of detail that we could go into about sort of how that scale may be achieved within different sectors, but scaling for me is the number one challenge.
Thank you. That's super insightful for me. Carolyn, I'll come to you next. Biggest challenges?
Well, if I just focus on the digital product passport, it's really a brand new tool and a brand new concept. So right now, concerning the digital product passport, I think that the major challenge is disseminating the concept as widely as possible so people can start imagining what might be achieved with it.
Thank you. Yes, short and sweet, and I think that speaks volumes to the challenge I think that's being faced. Elisa, how about from your perspective?
So Ben, I'll try to bring three, and I promise I'll be as fast as possible. I guess that one of the challenges that we're confronted with is that the way in which our economies and societies are designed and incentivized today is for them to be linear. Infrastructure, incentives, finance mechanism are all pushing towards a linear system. We really need to transform that. Then a second one that I want to put on the table, but I don't want to call it challenge, but something that we need to take care of, is that whatever is required to accelerate that transformation to circularity needs to be people-centered. And it speaks to jobs, it speaks to the role of consumers, it speaks to responding to the needs that people have and being mindful of that in this transformation. And then I'll put the last one with a special understanding of the context in which this conversation is happening. Because obviously discussions that are happening in intergovernmental frameworks have the potential to recognize that circular economy is an important instrument to accelerate progress towards globally agreed objectives. So definitely that recognition could help us give a booster to the conversation that we're having. Then handing back.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was short and sweet, but again, also the rule of three and very well followed. Elias, I'll turn to you. Challenges that you see in this space.
Well, many, but let me just reiterate and put emphasis and vote on the incentives. The incentives is everything. We are having today wrong incentives to producers and to the consumers. And if we don't switch the incentives and make the sustainable product a cheaper one, we will be talking 15 years from now again about the North Star called circular economy.
Thank you, Elias. Gwneaelle, I'll turn to you as well. Challenges.
Yes, I would make the rule of the three, if you don't mind. So first, I think it's the ecosystem approach. Basically, we need to design with less. We need to design long-lasting products. We need to use recycled materials. We need to build the business models, etc. So for me, first element is the ecosystem approach. We all have to look in the same direction, which means embarking huge numbers of people, materials providers, recyclers, manufacturers, NGO scientists, end user, public entities, regulators, etc. So it's the whole ecosystem, first challenge. The second challenge for me is technical and innovation, because we have to reconsider, to redesign the way we think and the way we make our products. We need also to rethink our logistics, our factories, and our capabilities. Second challenge. And the last challenge, it's a marketing and business model challenge, because we need to redesign the value everyone gets from products and their use. We need to finance new business model and rethink the way we do business together. So for me, three elements: ecosystem, technical innovation challenge, marketing and business model.
Thank you, Gwneaelle. That's incredibly comprehensive. And Gayle, I apologize. The challenge, from your perspective now, going after all of these fantastic insights, what are you seeing as some of the challenges that really need to be tackled?
Yeah, so I thought I had a power of two, but I remembered the power of three, so I thought I'd just add one at the end. So the first one, it kind of gets to a point we discussed before about really establishing that network, because this is not a space that any one organization or company can do on its own. So really making those connections and making them happen, that has to happen. The second piece has been mentioned earlier, is about regulations. Regulations in this particular space is one where I really think the devil is in the details. So for example, there are many of our products today that, like particularly in the healthcare space, that either are not allowed to be recycled or cannot contain recycled content. We need to fix that. I think that these are regulations that are decades old. We need to put precise, accurate regulations in place. The other area is about making sure that those regulations are the regulations that are emerging for the first time are accurate. So I would call to question, or I would applaud the UN work to set forward a global plastics treaty. But I'll tell you that the first version had a whole bunch of unintended consequences in it. So it's really important that we have that collaboration between government entities and companies. So I'm delighted that we're part of this coalition to support the UN global plastics regulations, legislation. I've lost track of my acronyms now. But that's super important. And then I'm going to go back just because I'm going to threes. First we had the network and the connection, then we had the regulations. The third is just a piece that I stick in there whenever we're talking about sustainability. It's about aligning around the science, it's about collaborating with others, and it's about acting with urgency. So those are mine.
Fantastic. No, great to hear, and a great segue actually. Before we close with Eric, Elias, I'm going to pass the floor back to you. Just curious to hear reflections. Just heard mention of regulators here. Speaking to one, very curious to hear your thoughts just on the discussion.
Yes, I have kept notes, so I have some comments and maybe even questions to some of you. So on the regulation part, except the sustainability of products, we have one that I'm just proofreading, is the directive on packaging. So Gayle, maybe we'll be in touch on that, okay? And I hope that your new invention that you just spilled the beans day before will actually be in line, if not as an example of how the new packaging can look like. Now that I talk about 3M, what about having roof tiles that are solar panels, that you don't even understand that they are solar panels? Do you have any inventions on that side? That's a question to you. On the ownership, so that goes to Elisa and goes to you, Gwneaelle, and Gayle as well. Can we move from extended producer responsibility to extended producer ownership so that we go into product as a service? And that's where Digital Product Passport wants to really support you. If you know that this is your product, you need to have this situational awareness where this product is, how it's used, when it's reaching the end of life. And we can actually get as a byproduct that you will be able to monitor, and you will know when things hit recycling and when you get a secondary material back. So you can actually plan on secondary material. Now it's kind of a chance, you know, where you can find it. So of course the easiest is to order the primary material because that's secured and even cheaper. So on the questions of the three sectors that Mathew talked about, so we have food, mobility, and construction. What is surprising, and the 21 solutions, so I would like to actually get the list of those 21 solutions that will abate 40% of the emissions. How come the energy is not one of the three or four? That's kind of surprising that, you know, because normally everybody talks about energy, so you went to the list under, normally what is under energy as a list. Well, that's maybe enough. So there is just one comment to tell you that, of course, Europe is all about renovation of buildings, and you know, we have our own problems in Europe, but it's the rest of the world that really matters in terms of, you know, Europe, we are 9% of the emissions, but we are 25% of emissions when it comes to consuming products. So Europe seems, you know, we are emitting less than others, but we are consuming a lot, materials and emissions. And if you think about that, you know, what can we do as regulation that will impact on the rest of the world? So like the Digital Product Passport, we would like UNEP to be our, you know, kind of sounding board together with the World Economic Forum to make the whole world aligned behind the, as Gayle says, science and action. And the last statistics, just for you to know, 50% of the cities, Gayle, in Africa and the developing world of 2050 have not been built yet. So the cement, the steel, and everything, can we get into, you know, they will need these quantities, but can it be recycled steel, green steel, or whatever Gwneaelle was talking about as green materials? Because China spent within 5 years in the beginning, you know, 10 years ago, within 5 years, they spent as much cement as US during all of 20th century. I mean, this is the quantities we're talking about in this developing world today.
Thank you, Elias. And much food for thought there. Eric White from the World Economic Forum. He's been meticulously taking notes this entire time. We're going to give him the floor here. Thank you so much for your patience. Curious to hear your reflections.
Thank you very much, everyone. Can you hear me if I keep my mask on or no? Oh, okay, I'm getting a no. So get off. I think I'm far enough from everybody. So thanks for a very interesting panel. It's a real pleasure on behalf of the World Economic Forum to be able to wrap this up. I think that, you know, if you're not familiar with the World Economic Forum, you may think that we're the organization that just puts on Davos, and that we are. But we've been working in the circular economy domain for a long time. We run a competition every year called the Circulars, which is a circularity innovation competition. We developed with our partnership base and launched and spun out the platform for accelerating the circular economy called PACE. We're partnering with Elias and team on digital product passports, and we've created an organization that has now been spun out called the Global Battery Alliance that's working on a battery passport across the whole battery ecosystem. So we do a lot of work in this space, and I'm happy to represent my colleagues here. My role in the forum is on digital technology across all of our climate and nature work. I actually used to work purely on digital, not on climate and nature. I came from our tech industry vertical. It gives me a bit of a unique perspective here, and I think that perspective is that circularity sits right at the middle of the two most important trends in the business world today, which are digital transformation and the sustainability transformation. Digital, Ilya said, circular economy is all about the flow of information. That means it's about digital. Sustainability, as we've talked here on this panel about the emissions benefits that you can get from investing in circular. And so I think if businesses thought about circularity as sitting right at the intersection point of these two mega trends, they would invest more in it and they would think about it differently. And it's clear that 3M and Schneider are, from listening to you, I should say. But I think more should do that. So if you do think about it this way, there's three considerations that folks need to be thinking about that haven't necessarily been addressed here that I want to mention, and then we'll close. And they all stem from the fact that when working on digital, I've found that the hard things are decidedly analog, and they're worth mentioning. So one, in transformation like this, your partnership ecosystem changes and becomes much more important. You may, for example, find yourself working with cement manufacturers, which you never thought you were going to do before. You also have to coordinate across your entire value chain to ensure that you don't get duplicate standards or things like that. You also have to work with governments to make sure the rules change to adapt to new processes. Secondly, digital transformation and sustainability transformation are both organizational transformations. You will activate your organization's immune response to prevent it from changing. You will change power structures inside your organization. You cannot do this without really strong executive leadership and buy-in to push it through. Really, really important. It has to be driven from the top. And then lastly, think about your entire stakeholder ecosystem, because there's so much you can do when these sorts of changes come about. And I have a story that I think is really cool that I'll end with, which is a forum partner, a Coca-Cola company, has a circularity program in South Africa. And what they've realized is in tracking the flow of their products throughout the circular value chain, they're also tracking the flow of money going around the circle the other way. And that means that they're seeing financial flows to the people that work at the very bottom of that circle, which in South Africa are trash pickers, who are people at the very bottom of the economic ladder. And what they've done is by investing in recording these financial flows on the blockchain, they have created a credit record for trash pickers and are succeeding in getting them banked for the very first time ever as a corollary of building in a circular economy ecosystem into their canning and bottling work. So those opportunities exist, exploit them. And with that, I'll leave you on that happy note. Wish you all a very successful COP. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Eric. And please, a round of applause to all of our wonderful panelists today. Thank you so much for joining us.